He says hospitals are operating in wartime mode as sirens once again blare across the city. Russian President Vladimir Putin is calling for a coup, urging Ukrainian forces to overthrow their government. But it appears Ukrainians, both soldiers and civilians, are only digging in to defend themselves. A short time ago, President Vladimir Zelensky released a remarkable video showing his country's top leadership intending to stay and fight.
Good evening, everyone. The leader of the fraction is here. The head of the president's administration is here. Prime Minister Shmyhal is here. Podolyak is here. The president is here. We are all here. Our military are here. Citizens and society are here. We are all here defending our independence, our state, and it will remain so. Glory to our defenders. Glory to our women defenders. Glory to Ukraine.
Well, in southern Ukraine, near the city of Kherson, Ukrainian forces have been trying to push back Russian soldiers. CNN's Paton-Walsh was at a key bridge connecting Russian-held areas to Kherson, and he has this report.
Well, this is where Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky said some of the fiercest fighting was yesterday. A key bridge on the outskirts of Kherson, essentially the route up into main Ukraine from the Russian-held peninsula of Crimea, taken in 2014. And you can see around me, there's been quite significant destruction here over the past 48 hours. That building clearly took a direct hit, presumably from some of the airstrikes we've been hearing. And this town, it's fair to say, is terrified. They turned their lights off last night. We saw hotels plunging themselves into darkness, children asking what's happening, low-flying aircraft coming in and the distant boom of airstrikes, intermittent small arms fire as well. I was told of dead bodies brought out from here. We've seen two. One man unfortunately left just in the middle of the road there. But the damage is pretty significant here, and we keep walking up towards this petrol station. You see the sort of bizarre local landmarks that end up being the focus of fighting, and it's clear the Ukrainian army made a significant stand here and took quite a lot of certainly damage to their vehicles, possibly military as well. Well, things seem to have been left off and where the Ukrainian forces' last positions were. They are a little bit further away from here. We don't give specifics when we're around them, but clearly there's been impact of shells nearby. That, I think, is part of a military guy's t-shirt, and still some artillery shells lying on the side here, unused. This petrol station, it seems, has also taken a significant hit. That van's been turned over, and one thing we're mindful of is a gas tank that seems to be slowly burning on that direction. What's extraordinary to see here is how fast civilian life returns back to this area. That's desperation. That's not people thinking it's safe. They're trying to get over to see people they care about, do what they need to do each day. But the contrast with that and the sheer kind of firepower that we're seeing used here, this must surely have been some kind of airstrike. I mean, the impact looks like it may have come from the Ukrainian side. But these tanks disabled, and all around us a sign of quite what Ukraine's government mean by the fighting having been most intense around here.
That was CNN's Paton-Walsh reporting there. Well, the White House says the US will soon impose sanctions directly on Vladimir Putin and Russian Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov. Hours ago, the European Union and the UK announced they were going to freeze foreign assets held by the two men. It's one of the measures Ukrainian President Zelensky has been calling for. Well, earlier, Mr. Zelensky called for direct talks with President Putin. The Kremlin suggested holding them in Belarus, which hosted some of the Russian troops which are now attacking Ukraine. It says Mr. Zelensky has now gone silent. The State Department says Moscow is offering a pretense for talks.
We want to make clear to President Putin that diplomacy by the barrel of a gun, coercive diplomacy, is not something that we are going to take part in. It is not something that will bring an end to this conflict in a real, genuine, and sustainable way.
CNN's Nick Robertson joins us now from Moscow. Good to have you with us, Nick. So the US has confirmed that it will sanction the Russian president and the Russian foreign minister. It comes after Germany made a similar move, the EU set to do the same. In practical terms, what does this mean?
Yeah, the British Prime Minister said that the UK will do the same thing as well, put sanctions on President Putin and his Minister of Foreign Affairs, Sergei Lavrov. In practical terms, it's a very, very public slap in the face for President Putin. He has a vast amount of wealth. Some of it has sort of been put on display by the opposition parties. Like say Navalny made a program about Putin's massive palace in Sochi, outside Sochi, in the south of Russia. It attracted a lot of attention, because people were interested in Putin's wealth. But a lot of it is sheltered and hidden away behind friends, behind family. It's difficult to know precisely where his money is and how the international community, all these countries, can sort of lay their hands on it or stop him if you were laying their hands on it. But I say it's a slap in the face because back in mid-January, Dmitry Peskov, the spokesman for President Putin, was asked precisely about this issue because President Biden had the day before said, when he was asked by a journalist, would you put sanctions on President Putin? And Biden had said yes. So Dmitry Peskov, President Putin's spokesman, said that this would bring a rupture in relations, that sanctioning the head of state was out of bounds and would lead to sort of breaking off of relations. Well, relations are in a pretty dire place at the moment, but that's why I say that this is going to sting for the Russian leadership because it is public and it's clearly something that they've indicated before will draw a negative reaction. It may not actually get much of President Putin's money, may not stop him living the good life, but it's something that he hasn't wanted to happen for sure.
Right. And Nick, it does seem farcical to hear that Moscow wants to have diplomatic discussions with Kyiv as it carries out this brutal assault across Ukraine. Clearly Putin can't be trusted, right?
Well, look, there's a huge track record here stretching back to December when Russia ramped up its forces, demanded conversations, a phone conversation with President Biden, had a narrative of working on diplomacy, well, all the time building up its forces, even saying it was drawing down when it was building up. And the way that this has been constructed, President Putin today saying that he's willing to have talks with Zelensky after Zelensky said, talk to me. Putin saying that his senior officials from the Defense Ministry, Ministry of Foreign Affairs, from his own office in the Kremlin, would go and meet Ukrainian officials. But he said that they would go and meet in Minsk. Well, Minsk is the capital of Belarus. Belarus is complicit in the aggression on Ukraine. It's a gateway for Putin's forces. They've been stationed there. They're driving from Belarus into Ukraine to threaten the capital. So the Ukrainians offered to have the talks in Warsaw in Poland, which felt to them more neutral. That's when things went off the track. We only have the Kremlin's version of it. And I think another thing that gave lie to what Putin was saying and suggesting was that, he said that Zelensky had said that Ukraine would be neutral. And I think that at the very least is a wanton overreading of some of the indications that Zelensky has given. He has not fully come out and said, I'd rather we didn't join NATO, I'd rather we remain neutral. His position is the country wants to join NATO. It's just that NATO won't let them in at the moment. That's his country's position, and he said that earlier today as well.
So I'm wondering, Nick, what else can be done to deter Putin? Because Ukraine is a country of 44 million people. Right now, Ukrainians are trying their best to defend themselves. The US has warned that this could drag on for weeks, if not months. What is on the table? What else can be done to deter Putin right now?
Well, President Zelensky says that what can be done is putting all sanctions, taking Russia, removing Russia from access to SWIFT, sort of the international financial trading mechanism that is a key part of how they do business with the world. It would have a negative impact on countries like Germany. That step hasn't happened yet. There is a reluctance in some European nations, the US, the UK, a bit more willing to go ahead with it. But this is what President Zelensky said, put all the sanctions on Russia right now. And why do I say that? Well, look, one of the sanctions that has gone on in the past 24 hours actually hits a bank that a lot of Russians have their money in. And that sets off conversations among Russians who say, okay, well, can I get my money out? What's it going to be worth? Can I afford to pay off my debts because the ruble's going down, but the costs of living are going up? That creates a narrative and a conversation that undermines Putin's position that what he's doing is going to benefit the country. And he's got about more than 50% support in the population. But the protests we've seen on the streets over the past 48 hours indicate that not everyone is behind him, that a chunk of the population are against what he's doing. So feeding that narrative by hitting the country with a vast array of sanctions is what Zelensky says will change the mood, change the atmosphere, because Putin does read the atmosphere in the country. He does need to remain a popular politician, despite the fact that he doesn't need elections. He does like that. The other thing that would change it is that if there was a high death toll of Russian troops, because that would, again, undermine Putin's popularity back home.
All right, Nick Robertson, good to have you staying across it all for us from Moscow. Thanks as always. We are going to have more coverage of Russia's invasion after a quick break. I'm Lynda Kinkade. You're watching CNN. Stay with us.